What if winning meant losing everything? What if survival was not the prize but the punishment? That's the dark trick buried inside Stephen King's The Long Walk. A story so cruel, so twisted, that by the time you reach the end, you realize there was never any victory to claim. Whether in the original novel or the recent film adaptation, the so-called winner is nothing more than another victim, trapped in a game designed to crush both body and soul. And here's the truth no one wants to admit. In The Long Walk, the moment you think someone has escaped, that's when the real prison begins. The setup sounds almost deceptively simple. 100 teenage boys, one endless road, and one single rule: keep walking or die. That's it. No breaks, no mercy, no turning back. Drop your pace under 4 miles per hour, and the soldiers with rifles don't hesitate. 3 warnings, and you're gone. At first, it plays like a contest, a sick pageant watched by an entire nation as though it's some kind of national sport. But the deeper you get into it, the more obvious it becomes. This isn't competition. This is execution disguised as entertainment. What kind of society turns the slaughter of children into primetime television? Oh, right. One that has decided cruelty is the best distraction for a restless, powerless public. And here's where Stephen King's brilliance cuts through. Unlike other dystopias where maybe there's hope of a rebellion or a final triumph, The Long Walk offers no such comfort. From the very beginning, the boys are doomed. The prize is an undefined anything you want for the rest of your life. But doesn't that sound like a sick joke? What life is left to claim after you've watched 99 others executed beside you? What's left when the only way to win is to keep walking long enough to outlast your own sanity? Take Garrity, the novel's central figure. He's ordinary, maybe even a little too ordinary, and that's what makes his fate so disturbing. He's not a hero, not a rebel, not some genius with a master plan. He's just a boy who keeps putting one foot in front of the other, even as his friends, rivals, and enemies collapse beside him. And by the end, when only Garrity is left, the so-called victor doesn't even feel alive. King refuses to give us triumph, because the whole point is that there's no such thing in a world built on cruelty. Garrity survives, yes. But is he free? Or is he simply the last prisoner standing? And here's the twist that makes it even more chilling. Survival itself becomes the curse. When the Major, the grinning face of authority, arrives to crown him as champion, Garrity doesn't react with joy. He doesn't even acknowledge the victory. Instead, he sees something else, a shadowy figure, a phantom on the road ahead, beckoning him forward. And what does Garrity do? He runs toward it. Madness, death, an endless march. Call it what you like, but one thing is clear. The contest never truly ends. The rifles didn't kill him, but the walk itself has stolen his mind. He's alive, but he's lost forever. And that's just the book. Because when Hollywood finally took its turn in 2025, the ending wasn't just rewritten, it was detonated. The film doesn't settle for psychological collapse. It goes for outright rebellion, blood, and sacrifice. But here's the question you've got to ask yourself. If King's ending showed us the horror of surviving, does the movie's ending really offer anything better? Or does it just change the shape of the same tragedy? If the novel gave us silence, despair, and psychological collapse, the 2025 film decided to give us noise, bullets, and blood. Because apparently, in Hollywood's eyes, madness wasn't dramatic enough. They needed an ending that would literally blow up the screen. And so instead of watching Garrity dissolve into a ghost of himself, the film hands us a showdown that turns despair into rebellion. But let's ask the real question. Does this rebellion actually mean freedom, or is it just another trick, another illusion served to audiences who crave catharsis but can't handle the full horror of King's original vision? Here's how it plays out. The march drags on until only 2 boys are left, Garrity and McVrees. By this point, their bond has been sharpened into something deep, something unshakable. Because what else can you cling to in a world where everything else is stripped away? The story makes it clear. They're not just rivals anymore, they're brothers in arms, holding each other up while death closes in from every direction. And that bond is exactly what the filmmakers decide to weaponize in the final act. Instead of Garrity collapsing into madness as in the book, he makes a choice. A shocking, deliberate choice. When he sees McVrees on the verge of breaking, Garrity distracts him by pointing out something as small, as fragile, as a bird in the sky. And then, in the same moment, Garrity stops walking. Just like that. He halts, knowing exactly what it means. 3 warnings. Gunfire. Execution. He doesn't stumble. He doesn't fail by accident. He sacrifices himself. And in a flash, the rifles tear him down. So yes, Garrity dies. The boy who survived everything in the novel is killed halfway through the movie's ending. Why? To ensure McVrees is crowned the winner. To pass the curse on to his friend. Garrity's death is framed as noble, selfless, almost saintly. But let's pause for a second. Isn't this exactly the kind of melodramatic narrative the regime wants? A martyr? A tragic sacrifice broadcast for everyone to watch? Another way to sell cruelty as entertainment? The irony is brutal. Garrity dies not as a free man, but as another pawn in the spectacle. His sacrifice is real, yes, but the system still gets what it wants. Another dramatic ending for the crowds at home. And what about McVrees left standing at the finish line? You'd think the winner would be showered with rewards, gifts, parades, adoration. That's what the prize is supposed to be, right? Anything you want for the rest of your life. But the movie twists the knife even deeper. The prize isn't riches. The prize isn't freedom. The prize is a ceremonial weapon. Think about that. After walking hundreds of miles, watching his friends gunned down one by one, McVrees is handed a gun, the exact tool of the system that destroyed them. It's not a gift, it's a mockery. It's the regime saying, "Here, hold the very symbol of your suffering, smile for the cameras." But McVrees doesn't smile. He snaps. Overcome by rage and grief, he takes the gun and does what audiences have probably been waiting for since the first boy was shot. He turns it on the major. One shot. The authoritarian architect of the walk, the man who smiled through every death, who turned the slaughter of children into national entertainment, drops dead on the spot. It's shocking, it's cinematic, it's the kind of rebellion that makes theaters erupt in gasps, and for one tiny second, it feels like justice. Finally, someone strikes back. But here's the dark twist no one wants to admit. This isn't a revolution, it's just one shot. The soldiers are still there, rifles loaded. The regime is still intact. The walk will continue next year because that's how the system works. McVrees may have killed the major, but did he really kill the machine? Or did he just become part of its script? Another tragic ending for the audience to consume. And let's think about what McVrees walks away with. Does he carry freedom? Or does he carry guilt, grief, and the stain of blood on his hands? Garrity sacrificed himself for McVrees to win, but what kind of victory is it when your best friend is dead and your only act of defiance is murder? The movie frames it as rebellion, but rebellion without change is just another form of despair. McVrees may have killed a man, but the walk is bigger than one man. The machine doesn't break just because one cog gets smashed. So what we're left with is this. The book ends with silence, hallucination, and madness. The film ends with rebellion, violence, and murder. Different styles, same outcome. Both endings hammer home the same brutal truth. There are no winners here. Garrity wins the march in the book, but loses his sanity. McVrees wins in the film, but loses his friend and his humanity. One walks toward a phantom, the other walks away into darkness. Either way, the road never ends. And that's the genius of both versions, isn't it? They refuse us the comfort of victory. They deny us the lie that survival equals freedom. And yet, here's the most uncomfortable question of all. Which ending is actually worse? Is it more terrifying to be trapped in endless madness, walking toward a ghost forever? Or is it more devastating to strike back, kill your oppressor, and still walk away hollow, broken, and utterly alone? So now we have two endings. One that collapses inward, one that explodes outward. one where Garrity walks endlessly into hallucination, one where McVrees fires a single bullet that echoes like rebellion. And yet, if you step back, both stories whisper the same dark secret. Winning was never real to begin with. Because in the long walk, victory is just another mask for loss. It doesn't matter if you live one day longer, if you're crowned the champion, or if the Major himself falls at your feet. The system wins, the cruelty wins, and the road never ends. But why? Why does Stephen King and why does Hollywood both insist on crushing the very idea of triumph? Let's break it down. First, let's look at the so-called prize. In both the novel and the film, it's presented as whatever the winner wants for the rest of his life. Sounds powerful, doesn't it? Almost mythical. But isn't that the point? It's a carrot on a stick, nothing more. It's bait dangled in front of desperate boys, convincing them to keep walking long after their legs and lungs beg them to stop. But here's the cruel reality. By the time someone wins, what kind of life is left to claim? Garrity in the book doesn't even remember what he wanted in the first place. McVrees in the film can't taste victory because it's soaked in Garrity's blood. The so-called prize is just another joke, another layer of cruelty dressed up as reward. Isn't it funny how authoritarian systems always promise freedom but deliver only more chains? Second, let's talk about the audience. Because remember, none of this happens in private. The long walk isn't just a punishment, it's a spectacle. Every step, every gunshot, every tear is broadcast to the nation like the Super Bowl of suffering. And this is where both endings become even more disturbing. Garrity's collapse in the novel, that endless walk toward a phantom, what is it if not the perfect dramatic ending for a voyeuristic crowd? They got to watch him break, not just in body, but in spirit. And in the film, Garrity's sacrifice followed by McVrees shooting the Major. What a finale for television. It's rebellion packaged neatly for the cameras, catharsis that still leaves the machine untouched. You can almost imagine the commentators, "What a shocking twist, folks! Tune in next year for more death, despair, and just maybe another spark of rebellion." The cruelty isn't just in the rifles. It's in the audience who keeps watching, who keeps demanding blood. Doesn't that sound a little too close to our own world? Third, we have the theme of human connection. Garrity and McVrees aren't just characters. They're the last fragile proof that even in a system built on cruelty, friendship can survive. In the book, losing that connection is what destroys Garrity. He keeps walking not toward victory, but toward nothingness, because the one bond that made the suffering bearable has been severed. In the film, that connection is reframed as sacrifice. Garrity gives his life for McVrees, and McVrees avenges him. Two different outcomes. Same core idea. Friendship is the only thing real in a world built on lies. And yet, even friendship cannot defeat the system. Isn't that the most devastating part? That love, loyalty, and sacrifice, all the things we think make us human, can only delay the inevitable, never break it? And finally, let's face the ugliest truth. Freedom itself doesn't exist in the long walk. The boys cannot quit. They cannot go home. They cannot even choose their own deaths except in the smallest ways, sitting down, stopping, firing one symbolic bullet. The book shows us Garrity choosing madness because that's the only escape left. The film shows us McVrees choosing violence because rage is the only weapon left. Both are desperate grasps for agency in a system that erases it. But here's the tragedy. Neither path leads to peace. Madness isn't freedom, violence isn't liberation. They are only final screams against a silence that doesn't care. So, which ending is better? That's the question fans keep asking. Do you prefer the chilling ambiguity of the book, where Garrity walks forever toward a phantom that may be death itself? Or do you prefer the cinematic fire of the movie, where McVrees kills the Major in a blaze of rebellion, only to walk away broken and alone? The truth is, there is no better. They're mirrors of each other, reflections of the same bleak truth. Survival is hollow, victory is poison, and no one escapes the walk. And maybe that's the whole point. Because isn't it more terrifying to realize that in this world, there are no heroes? Only survivors too broken to keep living, or rebels too consumed by rage to find peace? Think about it. Garrity wins the book, but what does he win? An endless march into madness. McVrise wins the movie, but what does he win? A gun in his hand and his best friend's blood on his conscience. In both cases, the so-called champion doesn't leave with freedom, but with chains. Invisible, heavy, eternal. Isn't that the cruelest twist of all? That the very thing they fought for turns out to be the very thing that destroys them? And so we circle back to the question that has haunted this story from the very beginning. In a world where cruelty is the rule, where survival is the prize, what does freedom really mean? For Garrity, it means surrendering to the phantom, walking forever even when there's nowhere left to go. For McVries, it means one bullet of defiance, followed by an empty road and no one beside him. Two choices, two endings, both tragedies. And maybe that's the reason The Long Walk has stayed with us for so long. Because it doesn't give us comfort, it doesn't hand us easy answers. It forces us to confront a world where cruelty wins, where survival costs more than death, and where no one, not even the victor, truly escapes. In that way, the story is more than just dystopian fiction. It's a mirror, a warning, a reminder of what happens when power turns life into entertainment and suffering into sport. And maybe, just maybe, it's asking us the hardest question of all. If you were on that road, if you were forced to walk until either your legs gave out of your mind shattered, what would you choose? Madness? Violence? Or would you keep walking, hoping for a prize that never existed in the first place? Because in The Long Walk there is no finish line. Only the broken, the sacrificed, and the defiant. Thanks for watching. And if you dare to keep marching with us through stories this dark, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. Because the road never ends, and the next step might just break you.